As Judy pointed out, we're late getting started, so it's after 5. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to our first PAC meeting of 2023. And if you would all follow after me in pledging the flag to our republic, or pledging allegiance to our republic and the flag which stands for it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, we'll take attendance. Start with myself. I'm here. Renee Westelusk. Do we have any call-ins?
Here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Renee was here and I was looking at the screen. You trained me too well. Thank you, Renee. Wes Katzenstein.
Present.
Lyle Fisher.
I'm here.
Judy Decker.
Here.
Camille Anderson.
Here.
Tim Carroll.
Here.
And Regina Troglin is absent. She told me this afternoon that she has a conflict. Don Zadiba.
Here.
Tom Bukoskis. He had informed me previously that he had something come up, another engagement out of town, so he's absent. John Kersey.
Present.
And Lorelei Oviatt is absent also. So we have a quorum, and with that, we can get to item number 4, the approval of our 2023 regular meeting dates. And I was notified that although we have a standing date of the 4th Thursday of the month, and that has stayed pretty consistent all through last year, except when modified by holidays, that we need to formally put those dates on a calendar and approve it.
You might want to do item number 3 before you go to number 4.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped right by that. Thank you, Judy. Good catch. So with that, is there any open public comment for items that are not on the agenda? Okay, none online. Do we have any public comment from in the room? Seeing none, we'll give it a couple more seconds for the callers, if there are any. Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go back to number 4. So, approval of the regular meeting dates. So it's the standing 4th Thursday, and I got the sheet today, and I've verified that there are no conflicts with holidays until you get to the November-December timeframe, which is where we usually do, and they are not on the holidays themselves. And what I would suggest is that we verify that those are our tentative dates right now, and when we get to October timeframe, we look at what the situation is, what the need, if we have a need for a PAC meeting that month, again, what the availability for members is for an alternate date. If we have some of us that are out of town and have trouble with a quorum, we can do that at that time. If we pick alternate dates for those 4th Thursday right now, for November and December, we wouldn't have any better chance of ensuring our schedules were free than we do today. So,
Do you want a motion then?
yeah, I would take a motion to confirm the 4th Thursday and the meeting dates, and I'll say them out. Let me say, well, after you make the motion, I will, and we get a second, I'll state the exact dates.
I so move.
Seconded. I'll second.
Okay, and the discussion involves, these are the exact dates. January 26th, obviously, we're here. February 23rd, March 23rd, April 27th, May 25th, June 27th, July 27th, June 22nd, July 27th, August 24th, September 28th, October, November 26th, and November is the 23rd, and Thanksgiving is the 24th, by the way, so we'll likely...
No, should be the 23rd.
So it was Thursday, David.
Well, it is, yes. My computer lied to me. when I looked at it. So that one, we will have to make a change in October when we get closer to it and clear our calendars. So we'll agree that, would you amend the motion that in October we select a date replacement?
I so move.
I'll second.
Thank you. And December 28th, which I don't think is Christmas,
No.
although the 23rd fooled me about Thanksgiving. Okay, so we have a motion to accept the fourth Thursday as read by me, as modified by the November meeting will be selected in October by this group. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Approval of the minutes of the November PAC meeting, which were sent out to everyone, and I note, and you all will note, that we did not include the minutes of the special PAC meeting in December, which we will cover next time. So this is the November meeting, and we did not cover this meeting's minutes, the November meeting minutes at that December meeting. So I noted one error after I sent it out, that I had not sent out my final version, or we had not sent out the final version, April and I, that it was Policy Advisory Committee minutes, not the report, because I formed those from the report and I did all the rest of the changes, and somehow I missed that in an early version. So with that change, that's the submission. Do I have a motion to accept or amend the minutes as submitted?
Motion,
Okay, including the change in name.
including the changes, yeah.
Anyone else second?
I'll second.
Who did the second?
Tim Carroll.
Oh, Tim.
Yeah.
Gotcha, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's easy, it doesn't force me to go to a name call vote, roll call vote. Okay, that takes us to the main subject for this evening, and deferred from our November meeting, was the PAC consideration, which we had agreed that we would do in November, of the Stantec presentation, which was the facilitation recommendations for potential incorporation in our PAC C&E recommendations overall, and the formal PAC report, and or the formal PAC C&E plan. So there were two things we were going to consider: is what Stantec had presented. Lisa Butler was here, and she was supported by staff online with regards to gaps and their recommended collaboration considerations, or I forget what the term they used for it, things to facilitate collaboration. So there were two things in their brief, and there was extensive review of that she went through. You remember she had a presentation. We had that available to us. It was given to this meeting. The public was available to talk about it. I've got a summary copy of it. The identified gaps were 5 major items. Addressing transparency and trust and legitimacy issues was 1. Open, transparent discussion of technical issues was 2. 3 was engaging all basin groundwater users in identifying the solution and identifying the problem and prioritizing solutions. 4 was pulling resources to work together and collaboration. And 5 was direct engagement with the communities, meeting them where they're at. And she had mentioned social demographics as a part of that. And I do have some later info on that before we make the final, our final decision that I will provide. The second thing that I mentioned was those best practices that were, they called stakeholder collaborative conditions for success. And those were 8 sponsors assessments, and that was the commitment. And that was one that we actually agreed that there might be some work to do. Second one was assessments overall. Third was stakeholders. Fourth was process design. Fifth was process approach. Sixth was the decision-making must be transparent and collaborative. Sixth was resources. And seventh was implementation. And again, they emphasized the collaborative or commitment of the stakeholders to the process. So that's a summary of what we all saw in November at length, and it's available on videotape, and we have the presentation, so we've had adequate time to go over that and mull over what we've thought. The additional part of the social demographics, Lisa had talked about when we brought up disadvantaged communities as one of the hurdles that we faced, that the Groundwater Authority faced in putting together a plan. A part of that was handicapped communities, and what came to mind was the translator for deaf or hearing disadvantaged persons, and the Groundwater Authority staff. Lisa had said there may be funding. She told them that there may be funding for that, and they may be able to provide it. DWR. So DWR would provide that for select meetings, and they wanted our feedback on what do we think our community, do we have a need for that in the community? And if so, what meetings would we recommend that we have that for? So first thing, let's take overall, aside from that one, the question of, and we have, you all have, Lyle, did you give your handout to everybody?
No, I did not. I only brought that.
Okay, can you read it to everyone?
I don't even have, you have it.
You're going to ask me where?
Yours here. Oh, if you want it.
Yeah, what I sent out, I only received 2 PAC member inputs by the deadline that we had established. I think it was on the 11th of January. And it turns out Lyle had sent another one. I never received it. He never received word that it had not gotten through. And he provided it. It's one page. Can you briefly read it?
Yeah, I had one little minor change that I would like to have seen, and that is in our approach section in our thing there, where we say, hire a C&E director, communications director, and I said, don't hire one. Make it a collateral duty. Just designate somebody to be the communications director. And I wanted to change with just that first word. Instead of employ, I wanted to say
You said designate.
designate. Yeah, designate someone to be as a collateral job. And that's all I would like to do, because that way you don't have to hire somebody and the associated costs and all that on their GA's limited, no budget, whatever it is, so. And I reiterated again, I think we've got it straightened out, the deal with fact sheets, that it is back in there now, finally, that brochures and handouts are not the same thing as fact sheets, and I would like to make sure, I just reiterated that. And the rest of that I said is fine. I don't see anything that we got major changes we needed to do based on Stantec stuff, I didn't think.
Now, you and I briefly talked when you presented this to me at the meeting, and we were talking about it. The part of the conversation that the subcommittee and the committee had on that employ word versus the designate word, it was that when we used the designate word, our intent when saying employ was not to say they had to hire a new person. It was to capture the idea that it could not be somebody designated, an existing person provided from one of the 5 agencies under Joint Powers Authority, i.e. the city or the water district or the county that it be clean and unencumbered and directly funded by and responsible to the manager, and that therefore there was no chance of a conflict of interest. And so that was what we wanted to capture. And the question would be to the group and to you, obviously, because of your words, is do we still think that captures both of those ideas? That it does not force the groundwater authority, should they accept the recommendation anyway, to hire an additional person, but it does, if they accept the recommendation, imply that they should not, that it should be a direct employee, not a JPA funded person. And everyone has seen the comments from West and Judy. Perhaps I would offer the opportunity, each of you, to briefly discuss them, or in addition, everyone had the opportunity to read them, of course, which they did not. Lyles.
Yes, I have some more comments. First of all, I don't know if the Water District has. I have not received anything from Stan Tech in the way of a written report. And
I asked, by the way, Judy, I asked this afternoon, and they have not, the staff has not received anything.
I think we have already submitted our C&E plan. The board accepted it. Some 5 years ago, the original PAC committee submitted a C&E plan. It is up to the board to take the responsibility to use items in it, to change it if they so desire, to fit their needs at the time better. There is something additional that has occurred that it doesn't directly have anything to do with the communication and engagement plan, but in fact it does. And I don't know how many people get the Daily Independent, but last week there was, as announced previously at the Water District meeting, a big ad or announcement by the Water District again of all the details of their groundwater adjudication. Right next to it was a big announcement in super fine print by Mojave Pistachios et al. That they were suing the Water District and every groundwater pumper and user in this valley. There are so many lawsuits that I am not clear how the Groundwater Sustainability Board and the process is going to be able to proceed. Along with those items, the Water District is proposing a change in their rates, whereby I don't know if less money will be collected or more money, but their rates are that the lower end water users will not pay the replenishment fee. If we want to do anything for the GA, I think we need to go back to way back when Commander Longbottom was here and presented the GA with a POAM and showed them the detailed version of how to do it. That people don't know, because I'm not sure how much the board knows as to where the money that is coming in, how much they're getting, what they can project for a budget. I'm not talking about grants here. I'm talking about local money. I think these lawsuits have tied many hands and mouths. So far, anyway, the Mojave Pistachios hasn't sent out individual notices to people, or at least if they have, we did not receive one yet. I think this is it's an important thing to consider. And it's out of our hands. I think what we wrote and what we submitted is good. We've submitted it. Yes, it could be changed. We had transparency in there big time. It's up to them to do this, not us. And again, I don't have anything in writing, so, you're kind of like, he said, she said.
So Wes, do you want to summarize your comments? And we'll give everybody the opportunity to talk before we decide what, if anything, we're going to do.
Yes. It was, when the presentation by Stantec was from a whole different way of organizing the world. It was from how do we get together and discuss things? And so when I watched it and I looked at the collaborative conditions and the other things that they proposed, finally, after I thought, I decided that, and these are comments I made when they were here, I think that's all pretty well put in place by the Groundwater Authority. If you look at the process that's occurred, there's been every opportunity for people who want to put the effort out to, these conditions have been met, and the information has been there, and the opportunity has been there for people to act collaboratively if they choose to do it. Now I think I agree a little bit with what Judy said that there are maybe some additional changes the C&E plan could be made in the C&E plan, but they're slight. I think the C&E plan, as we rewrote it, really checks the box if it's executed. And once again, one of my comments here is stakeholders have a responsibility to engage after they are alerted to the overdraft. I think it's safe to say essentially everybody that's impacted has been alerted that there's a problem. And so it comes right back around to the C&E plan, and the C&E activities need to provide that introductory background material, the POAM, fact sheets, that if somebody is interested, that maybe they've been alerted if there's a problem and they want to get themselves educated, there needs to be a way through what's on the web, what would probably be on public media. There needs to be a way through that, or social media, for them to become educated and come up to speed. And once again, it's what they need is a POAM. They need to have a simple introductory statement of what's happened and where they can go for more information within the website in particular. Now, a couple of smaller things that might be useful, and I'll read my own comments here. The GA should increase its activities to brief stakeholders in the field, and that's something that Stantec mentioned. However, this would require that the comprehensive introductory information and integrated schedule recommended in the C&E plan update, that those have been provided and approved for presentation to the public. So there would have to be that material that's approved and ready to go to be made available to these focused activities in the field. And I made an observation here that the presence of lawsuits, and I think I heard Judy say this too, the presence of lawsuits may limit the GA in providing simple, straightforward overviews of the logic behind parts of the GSP and other activities. That there's a danger that if someone says the wrong thing, it might be exploited by the legal system or by adversarial lawyers. So I think they need that simple, straightforward information for the public that's been approved for release and make that available. Another thing in particular I think the GA could do, and this is once again not a major thing, I said here the GA should embark on a campaign to provide the public with the addresses of the web page and the Facebook page after the comprehensive introductory information and integrated schedule recommended by the C&E plan update are put in place and posted on the web page.
You know what? There's something that the GA board could do right away that doesn't require any money. They could be less formal, friendlier, have a few printed agendas for people who come who don't usually come, not sit up here without smiling, engage the public when they want to be engaged. There are what, half a dozen public that come every month, and they keep turning on that timer. And there's rarely anybody who goes over it, and so what if they do? The difference between going to the Groundwater Authority meeting and going to the Water District meeting is about 180 degrees. And I invite you to come along to a Water District meeting. They meet the second Monday of the month at 6 o'clock and see what I'm talking about. They could do that without spending a dime. The other thing they could do is they could all show up for the meetings. We have never met in person the representative from San Bernardino County since Bob Page left. John Vallejo hasn't been here for almost 3 years. Those are things they can do right away and give a better impression.
Wes, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, I had just a little bit more I wanted to say. Once again, there needs to be simple, straightforward, introductory information that's approved, that's available and to share with the public. And that needs to be on the webpage and on social media. And it occurred to me that one thing the Groundwater Authority might be able to do, just to get the word out, is perhaps simple billboards in newspapers, postcards, or in the billings of the IWV Water District, social media. Just post the address of the website and a link to the social media where the information might be found. So that in itself might be enough to get some folks on board. If the links are there and the information, the simple introductory information is needed, is posted.
Are any of those things not in both the communications and the detailed communications recommendation or the written plan, formal plan? I think we said all those.
I think you're right. If we didn't say it directly, we've danced clean around it, so.
Well, and if we decide, I would say if we decide that none of these changes they recommended should be changed in what we had submitted in the past, we can provide additional emphasis on certain things that we've already said. And that's appropriate.
I think over time we can provide them additional addendums if you want to be formal and call it that. If something comes up that we see a need for, we could agree as a group and submit it. Nothing is cast in concrete here.
No, and they've indicated to us in the past it was going to be a living document, and that's one of the major roles of the PAC itself. So with that,
I had one other brief comment I wanted to make.
oh yes,
It's occurred to me that DWR put resources into this, the Water District coordinated, made it happen, and the ball's kind of in the Groundwater Authority's court to address what the recommendations are. And I think they've kind of handed that to us. And that's why I wanted to make it very clear from my point of view, the process that the Groundwater Authority has undertaken all along here has checked these boxes, except for the changes we recommended in the C&E plan. So I wanted to make a clean statement to that effect. End of statement.
what we submitted checks the boxes and what they've done, yeah. And checking the boxes can have a negative connotation. You didn't necessarily mean it in that negative connotation.
No. Right.
It's if they, and the important words he said at the start of what he said was if followed or if implemented.
Right.
And Judy alluded to the same thing.
And if you take this language they used in this stakeholder collaborative conditions for success, think about it for a while. None of this language was used in the activities of the Groundwater Authority, but all of these kinds of things took place.
And they're all mentioned, by the way, in the communications plan and recommendations. Every one of them.
Right.
So with that, I'd like to offer all other PAC members, and we'll go down the line, to comment on whether they would recommend anything we consider for a change in light of what the discussion has been the last two meetings or not. And so, Don, could we start with you? You got to think the fastest. Everybody else has more time now.
First, Judy had mentioned about a written report from Stantec, and there has not been a written report issued. Water District has not received one. But I would mention that, and I don't know that the time has been established, but Stantec has scheduled a meeting of the Planning Committee for February 9th. Again, I don't recall what the time is. That will be ahead of the Water District's regular board meeting on Monday, February 13th. And on the agenda for that Water District board meeting will be a report out from Stantec. Lisa will be participating remotely, giving a report to the board on the process. So you might want to tune in for that.
You mean the city planning commission or the county or?
No, there's a planning committee for the Stantec facilitation process,
Okay,
consisting of stakeholders that have been
all right.
designated, yeah. So as far as the communications and engagement plan, I think most of the elements are, I think the communication and engagement plan addresses most of the elements in the Stantec's conditions for stakeholder collaboration. So I don't feel there's substantive changes needed to the communications engagement plan. This committee met over multiple meetings to put a lot of thought into that and develop it, and I think it's a good plan. And as others have said, it was handed off to the Groundwater Authority, and I think it's up to them to implement it to the extent that they can. And again, I don't know, I don't have any recommendations to change it. I do have to apologize for not submitting anything to you. I think you know my circumstances over the last month and a half or so, and for a while I was in limbo, so I couldn't really do anything. So.
For the benefit of the public and also all the members of the committee up here, can you describe? You had retired, and the person that had been hired to replace you, that was not completed, and they went out again, and that happened again, and essentially. That's the limbo that you were in for a couple months, and you couldn't work by virtue of California regulations.
So, yeah, the timeline, just so everybody is aware, I had submitted my paperwork to CalPERS for retirement in October. The candidate that was selected was to have reported November 15th and declined, didn't receive the contract, whatever circumstances, but didn't report on that date. So with the holidays, it was pretty much difficult to restart a recruitment process. So the board approached me about continuing as an interim general manager. CalPERS has a requirement that when you retire, you have to wait 180 days before you accept employment. But they do have some situations that they can accommodate exceptions to. There's a classification as a retired annuitant for situations like that. And through going through this process, we did find out that CalPERS has an emergency response team, which I didn't know. So the board had to have a special meeting, adopt a resolution. An agreement was presented to the board. The documentation was provided to CalPERS with regards to the resolution, the agreement, the agenda, the meeting notes, and they had to evaluate whether or not that those things met the conditions to classify me as a retired annuitant. So I received word on January 10th that they had approved it, and I was back in the office on January 11th. So back, as you said earlier, back in the saddle. But one of the agreements with the board was that I can have some flexibility, be able to work both at home and in the office. So I've kind of been doing that. I'm in the office every day, but I'm not there all day. there are
Do you have
several
an-
things I can do as, virtually, I have meetings, phone calls, and things that I can do from home.
So do you have any idea of the anticipated duration?
Typically, these sorts of agreements are for a year, but when I was approached by our attorney, I said, I don't want to do a year. I kind of want to move on with my life. He asked if 9 months was acceptable. I said, well, under the circumstances, yes, but my desire and hope would be that this is all resolved within 4 to 5 months. So
Good, well,
That-
go ahead.
that's the time frame I'm looking at, is 4 to 5 months. Whether or not that's realistic.
Well,
remains to be seen.
I think we're happy to see you and be part of it, and those of us, I think half the board or half the committee is federal or had experience with federal employment, and that retired annuitant stuff is very similar, the limitations and the workarounds.
There are some very strict guidelines to qualify for that, so we have to make sure that we stay within those guidelines.
We're glad to see you, welcome.
Thank you.
Tim, your recommendation?
So you try to get away and they pull you back in.
Third time.
So, I think our C&E plan is an excellent plan, done a really good job, and we're all responding to the fact that we don't have enough water to go around. And from the perspective of our committee, I think we've done everything we can. But I have another hat, and that is being on the board out at Inyokern. And Inyokern is a very small town, and it has, our little operation out there is like $200,000 a year. We've got 2 half-time employees and volunteers on the board. And, from our point of view, I've tried to engage with the GA for a year and a half or so, and it's basically crickets. They can put us out of business, but there still is no money. There's no money if, it's a little bit of money.
Can you make sure that you're speaking into the mic?
It isn't, okay. So, we're not sure what to do about it, but we are trying to figure out what we can do about it, and there may be some reorganization options, which have been talked about for a long time. But, I don't know how to explain it any better, but if the amount of money that the GA fees are higher than our actual annual operating budget, and what we do is we pay for the lights and the water and sewer out there. It's a small operation, but we try to be efficient. And, Inyokern's also had a lot of problems too. I mean, we have a history of difficulties. And one of the big difficulties was we need new water meters. And the California Rural Water Authority and the GA, some of the money, I think, one of the grants was to help pay for water meters, not just for us, but some of the other mutuals. And for some reason, that was canceled, and that makes our economic situation even worse, because we haven't, and those meters should have been in by now. Anyway, so, I think we're doing all we can from the PAC to communicate the issues, but I don't know that the information we're giving is getting through, because, we're basically going to cut the people off, like in Inyokern, and have enough water for the people that are left over. But it's like, that's kind of a strange way to balance the budget of water. If you can cut off anybody that needs water so that the people that are left over have water, that's kind of, and that seems to be, I don't think it's anybody's fault, but that seems to be the inertia of collective decisions. Because I can see that Inyokern may be, Trona may be in the same situation we're in. And we talked to some of the growers. Ed Imsan, who used to be on our committee, he once told me, he says, don't we need food? Ag, cutting off ag makes a lot of, maybe makes our budget work. But I don't think it, and another thing is if, I hope I'm explaining this well enough, but there's a lot of low-cost housing in Inyokern and other places in the valley that will be at risk if, places like Inyokern end up, the GA already has a already has a judgment against us, and they can turn the water off if we can't pay. So we can't pay. So anyway, so that I'm giving the other, for as far as Inyokern is concerned, the collaboration didn't work, even though
Okay,
it was.
and what we want, is there anything we want as a PAC, you want us to recommend? I mean, related to C&E, let's stay on the topic.
Well, I would appreciate if the GA engaged with us.
And we can talk about that offline or otherwise.
There's another issue that you brought up indirectly, and that is new construction. There's not enough water for the existing population as of when Jerry Brown signed in Sigma into law, which was 2015, 2016, and yet we continue to have new construction, which takes additional water when we have a problem with not having enough water for those that are already here. And I find that to be a big issue. And no, it's not in our C&E plan, and it probably doesn't belong there, but it certainly needs to be relayed.
For now, we're off topic, though, yes.
Well, can I add something that's also maybe off topic, but might be relevant? And that is, the plan that we have to get another 5,000 acres is a great idea. And I mean, a lot of work, but you can have a really good plan, it still doesn't work. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles. We've just had like a couple weeks of a pretty severe rainstorm. And, I've talked to Don about, trying to collect rainwater. And then also this coming summer, LA Aqueduct will have some overflow potential. If we could, I suggest we could to direct that to the saline water areas. And if you put the water from the LA Aqueduct into the saline water areas, you would raise the overall aquifer. And again,
We're getting way off
okay,
topic.
this is way off topic, but
And by the way, that's been discussed.
Right,
And they
right.
have talked to DWP about that.
you and I even talked about it, and you said, because I think if we have a large reservoir of salt water, that can provide, less energy to clean that to a agricultural standard, for instance. And so if we raise the overall aquifer, that's one of the things we'd like to accomplish.
Yeah, there's issues about where you do that
Right.
might make it worse, might make the
Oh, I
salt
know.
water
That's
intrusion
true.
worse. So let's stay out of the
It's
tax
a-
business and
it's
stay
a,
focused on the
hydrological,
PAC and what we can do for C&E.
Okay, I'll stop.
I know.
I could go on, but I will stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lyle,
Dave,
sorry.
it's Carol.
Oh, I don't have you on my screen. I'm sorry. We can hear you, Carol. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I don't want to take your meeting off topic, but at some point I'd like to respond to some of Mr. Carroll's comments and see if we can't get some understanding and move in a positive direction.
Yeah, I was gonna get with you and after this and talk about how they get together. But could we, if we do that after our topic as part of this meeting, does that meet your needs, Carol?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to let you know I was here and let you know I did have a few responses. I just didn't want to take your meeting off topic.
Well, I'm sorry. Thank you for doing so. I had no idea you were on. So we'll continue, and then we'll continue with the group, and then we'll come back to the social demographic and the, I'm having a bad day, translator for folks that don't hear well. So sign language. we'll come back to that, Carol, and anything else that you have had in your discussions with or offers from Stantec and DWR.
Great.
Okay, and Lyle, your comments?
I realize I want to read my last sentence, the thing I submitted to you. We all understand that engaging a disinterested public is an extremely challenging task and will require a great deal of energy to educate the public. That's my last sentence.
Thank you.
So that's all.
But overall, you don't recommend any changes
No, I don't think
other than emphasis?
Yeah. We need a communications director, yes, but I don't want to see a new hire do it.
Yeah,
yet.
and remember, the one thing, and it was in our PAC report that we noted, was that she had said that she believed DWR had money for that communications director, so that's a positive.
Okay, that would be good.
We don't know that.
Right, okay.
Oh, you've already talked. John, start with you on that side.
Nothing really to add. I mean, you're hearing pretty much the same thing repeatedly, so I'm not going to pile
I just
on.
want to verify, I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to speak on this topic.
I appreciate it.
Renee?
Okay, I'm looking at my notes from the Stantec meeting, and I remember we were instructed to rewatch the meeting, get out the CNE plan, and see what tweaks or additions could be made, and any paths to collaboration. Well, as I went through my notes, things that jumped out at me that Lisa, this administrator, was saying things like, and I agree that we have to do some of what she said. Communications, she said, are usually delegated to public information officers in most GAs. And she says this requires resourcing, and it's part of the normal best practices to have a singular point of communication. And she said you could ask DWR for funding, and I think we need to pursue that. And then I have a few other things. She said you've got to leverage every event or activity to communicate. And that means taking advantage of the petroglyph festivals, both our fairs, any other activities that are, when we have social events, we should have a booth, and that takes manpower. And she also talked about going to meetings, that you have to go out there and engage the public. If we start engaging the public and showing up at events and going to meetings, it takes manpower to do that, but you could get volunteers possibly to do that. But I don't think without doing some of the things, and I think they should be listed in the appendices, these events that the community has. And I don't think I have a copy of the final draft of the CNE plan that was submitted to the GA, because somehow I don't have the final one, but there was supposed to be 2 appendices added. One
You said
was,
that we did not complete those 2. We left that to staff, and/or we offered our help.
okay, you're talking about the GA staff has to put that together?
Yes. And actually, the GA staff, as they did the first time, the process we used was we submitted a draft to them. They took that draft and modified. They took what we had submitted and provided modifications and additions to it, and then made it the official CNE plan. And
Okay.
so we were offering them, the outline and the verbiage, and we referred to 2 specific appendices that we recommended, and said we would be happy to help with the assembly of that.
Okay, because I think it should be in the appendices, the list of common events that we have every year. And like we do have a farmer's market. There's other events, like, I think the city is planning eventually to have like something similar to a wine walk, on Balsam Street, things like that. She also mentioned message development requires saturation. She said in order to get through to people's brain cells, she says you have to repeat things like 8 times. So what I'm saying is by engaging the public and going to events and actually doing these outreaches, that's part of the saturation.
So your recommendation would be that we have referenced something like this at specific public events, and we add reference to, there are certain recurring events and some that come and go, but we would list such as these in the appendix.
Yeah, I think you need to get a list so that people know, because the GA changes hands. We got different board members, et cetera, all the time. So to me, there needs to be a list of all the regular events that we have.
Well, that list will change. The staff has to keep track of that. There are opportunities in where they can match up the speaker. What we're saying is we would recommend and I took it as an expansion to what communication had been done, that they make a prioritized attempt at getting out there for, petrichor festivals. Some of the things that are bigger, get bigger crowds, and maybe on the other hand, there's something like the farmer's market, which is more routine, but an opportunity to talk to the public in a less congested atmosphere, if you will, more relaxed atmosphere.
The Petrichor Festival has a lot of people from out of town.
Yep.
But she also mentioned billboards, putting messages on billboards at grocery stores. She also said you can be creative with, like she said, Kansas City, they had coffee cups, I don't know, donated or wherever you could, maybe at events that had like a water message on them. She also talked about beer breweries could get out a message, conserve water, drink beer. It was things like that I think need to be included in the appendices. I think you need to be more specific.
So, yeah, but it wouldn't be a formal, a change to the formal words we have submitted, but in the appendices. That's what I just want to confirm that. And I think there's value in there. There's a pony in there.
Okay, and then she also said other critically overdrafted basins were thought to be moving too fast. And that's been one of the criticisms I've heard over and over, that our GA is moving too fast. Some of the things she was saying to us, other basins are facing as well. And she also said that it's very hard for public to deal with constant change. And, but she said, like, public education seems to be a problem with the getting the word out from the Groundwater Authority, and she says these things can be fixed. And I think it all boils down to communication and having that communications director funded. I think we should ask DWR for financial help. And she also ended part of the discussion. She says, go back and make a recommendation to move forward in a different way. Is it possible to work better going forward? And I think she was mainly emphasizing outreaching to the public. And that's my take on most of what she said.
Thank you. Camille?
I agree with Dawn. I don't think that the plan itself really needs any changes. It's all going to be in how they choose to implement the individual parts that they choose to implement. How specifically they want to communicate and engage the public.
Thank you. And for my part, I agree also. I think there were things and what they had the benefit of looking at our document only. They didn't have the benefit of sitting in these meetings for years, and the benefit of what we have talked about with the GA board itself for years. I think there were value in what I referred to a pony in the pile for some of the specific recommendations that could go in the appendices and the types of things that would add context and depth to what we had written, but I didn't really see anything that was of a big enough nature that I would recommend changing the documentation that we went forward with. And so therefore, and recognizing the point that Judy made, that this is going to continue, and we can have a continuing role in recommending something that we see or that comes up with regards to communication. I didn't see a need to make a formal change also, and that's kind of the sense I got from the group. Now, I was interested to see remember when she presented this, they were having a town hall with us in one sense, and she said that explicitly. They were taking our inputs, they were going to add them to what they had done in the rest of the community. That was going to go into the final report, which we had hoped would have been ready by now. And also that they were going to do an in-depth social demographics profile that I also was interested in seeing, and that part of that was the communications for disadvantaged handicapped people, and specifically some of the hearing impaired. So we did not get that. For the edification of everyone on the panel that may or may not have seen the Groundwater Authority Board, I asked that question of the board and the water district's reps that if we did receive one, could we get the information to us in time for this meeting? Because that was the implication that I drew, the inference I drew from Lisa, that they were, and obviously they didn't make that deadline. I asked Carol if we had received one today, and she confirmed. Don, you confirmed as well that neither group had received anything. So the one more thing on what I'm hearing from everybody, and we'll vote on it in a minute, but I want to include the piece about the disadvantaged stakeholders and handicap. And any other information that you have from your discussions with DWR or Stantec. Carol?
Thank you, Dave. So as I think I previously mentioned to you, I think last week, April and I had a meeting with a firm that's a subcontractor, subconsultant with Stantec, and they were asking us about the need for interpretive services. And Don, I think you had referred them to us, so I think that's where the contact came from. And so we had a bit of a chat about how that might be used, but we really thought that bringing this question to the PAC would be useful because April and I are limited, and I mean, especially I am because I don't live in the area. I don't live in the community, but do we know of aspects of the community that don't necessarily understand English, or do we have a big need for, say, communication for hearing impaired, or for public meetings? Is there a need for us to utilize any kind of interpretive services, whether it's again, for hearing impaired or maybe translation into different languages? Do we think that there's a need for that to incorporate into our communications and engagement? And so we wanted you to consider that and see if there were any recommendations that might come from you that we might relay back to them. And I believe that Don, you asked about, or excuse me, Dave, you asked about the cost. I believe that this would be part of the facilitation support services program.
So, and the facilitation support program, that implies, I'm inferring, that's for the next 3 years, going throughout the implementation period of the GSP, that might be available to us?
Now, I don't have I think the water district has the contract for that support. Don, you might have a better feel for how long that lasts.
Yeah, the agreement was supposed to end last year. It's been extended, and DWR approved it to go through the end of February. There was consideration for extending it even further, but we had discussions with Stantec and decided that the end of February would be enough time to accommodate the planning committee meeting and the district board meeting to basically close out the project.
I have a question, Don, since you are the only one here that represents a public agency firsthand. Is there a need, do you think, for Spanish language interpretation? I mean, you are, not you personally, but your front office deals with the customers, and they would be able to answer that question.
We haven't come across the need for signing. I mean, there are other languages that are spoken in the community.
Yes, I wasn't thinking of hearing impaired. I was thinking of a translation from English to Spanish in particular.
Well, and that's probably the most common language,
Right.
alternate language in the community. We do have Spanish-speaking employees, so when somebody comes in, we are able to accommodate them. And
But no, my question is, do you see a need for that to come forward to the GA? Or there's something that you should think about for a while?
Well, I was going to suggest along these lines, and given what Carol said about, and you said about the contract length and what the tasking really was, and I'm sorry, I did not connect the languages when I was speaking about it earlier. Every time I said hearing impaired, I was including mentally the whole thing. My bad. But I would suggest that would still not require a modification to our plan, because we mentioned consideration for hearing impaired or different languages. What I would suggest, and this was brought up by my exchange with Carol, was that each one of us represents a constituent group, a stakeholder group. We can say what our opinion, for example, tonight is about members of our group that we are aware of or have heard from that might need it. You know, what's Spanish language might be one to consider. Are there other languages? Are there hearing impaired people that we know that have come up or exposed the need to get the information and then do a second look at it, take it home and talk to your constituent group members that you normally do, or when you go out and get the information, and confirm or come back next time with, you know, any identified need. Because I doubt if everyone here has thought about this specific question, and certainly I would go out and canvass a few other business folks.
I think from my standpoint with Searles Valley Minerals and with Trona, since Regina isn't here, Trona does have a considerable Spanish-speaking population, and there are members of that community that do not speak English in Trona.
And if we did get a Spanish or any language interpreter, I think, and I don't know the answer to this, the GA and the city would have to answer, is do they have the ability, let's say at a GA meeting or a special town hall meeting, if those were the events that we said maybe you want to have at some of these big important events, you know, town hall type discussions, you want to have a sign language interpreter or a Spanish language interpreter, do we have the ability to do that? In other words, for a sign language, we have separate cameras in this room, so they could stand, you know, as we see on television and online, you see the interpreter speak as the speaker is speaking. I do not think we have that capability in Spanish language, but we would have it in person perhaps. You know, I've been in meetings in Bakersfield where this is commonly done, and you almost need 2 rooms to do it.
Right, and it costs money. I will ask her, but our administrative assistant is severely hearing impaired, but she comes prepared to the meetings with special headphones so that she can hear. And one always has the question of how far a government entity can go and how far, and we have said this many times, the stakeholders should go. Obviously, the stakeholders we're talking about with regards to the water situation are the adults. And so it is their responsibility as adults to find out what's going on. And, you know, if there is for instance, if there is a meeting in Trona, in Seals Valley, perhaps that is where a Spanish language interpreter might be needed. But again, it might be a volunteer. All the things we're talking about here, they're wonderful ideas, and Stantec has great ideas. They all cost money.
That was the key, was that there might be money available. But do we, you know, what Carol's asking us is, do we see a need or was there a demand? And I'm not hearing from the group that we think this community is ill-served in that manner, has been ill-served.
Yeah, I don't recall ever seeing anybody in any of the GA meetings or our meetings that was in need of sign language or a translator. I wasn't actively watching for that, but I could see where perhaps in Trona there might be a need if they had the focused meetings that we talk about or that Stantec recommended. But I, just speaking for myself, I don't recall observing a need in any of the meetings that I've been part of. I didn't remember seeing anybody in the audience that was apparently not understanding.
Anybody else?
I do. I think it was the one adjudication meeting that was held here. The room was full of people, and there was somebody sitting in the back who didn't understand, but they had brought someone with them to tell them what was going on in Spanish. And after all, something like adjudication, you get the notice, it's legal, it's difficult to understand even in English, so one would appreciate having an interpreter for something like that.
Carol, do you think you've got enough to work with, or what would you recommend further here?
I think this is good feedback. I'm going to relay the conversation here and the thoughts here back to the consultant. It sounds like maybe the most helpful would be to have some of our key documents maybe available in Spanish, especially as we start producing more fact sheets. What do you think about that? You know, maybe
Good idea.
just having more, having more information available in Spanish. It sounds like that would be the other language, the non-English language that we would want materials available in, right?
I agree. I'm seeing head nods and a couple people speak yes around the table or dais.
I think that would be perfect then, and I'll relay that.
And then I think also I'm getting the sense of what I've heard. If there are specific meetings that are very targeted and we know a significant portion of the community is going to engage in that meeting, like a public meeting in Trona or a meeting, you know, a workshop on the imported pipeline and you know, the costs and whatnot, that we might expect a large group of the public to come to, that the groundwater authority consider have a translator capability in either Spanish if we get enough participation in the former and/or sign language. But we don't, unless anybody thinks there really is a need for it, we haven't seen it in the community. We haven't seen a clamor. We haven't seen any kind of concern expressed on others' behalf for this. And if there are, please, if there are members of the public that view this and believe there's a contingency that needs something like this, let us know, and we will bring that forward to the Groundwater Authority.
Okay.
So with that, before we vote on what we want to do with this, since the subject came up under this discussion about Inyokern CSD and as a piece of the communications and engagement plan, and you want to provide some clarification and engagement with Tim, Carol, you want to catch that now? And we're going to vote on
David?
whether I'm sorry?
Can I suggest that we vote on the C&E plan first, since the conversation with Inyokern CSD is off topic?
Well, it is, but it was related to the communications that have taken place with them, and we can't have an additional, it's a new agenda item that we can't have in the rest of the agenda.
Okay.
In that case, so I'm taking my
So it's a point of order.
It's a little bit of liberty with Robert's Rules of Order, and what we've said about this group is I allow, and previous chairs allow a little bit more discretion and freedom to explore things that might be related to it, but not take away from it. And we had a little extra time tonight. We're not, is it, you need now, or we're not open for public comment yet, unless there's something relevant to this?
It is, it is relevant. Is this on? Yes, it is. I would like to remind you folks that there has been a longstanding public interface and outreach that has gone on for 10 years. It's email to the domestic well owners once a month and oftener as required. Thousands of hours have gone into it, literally. And it was successful in a lot of ways, but I think as the GA got underway and it was actually trying to do outreach of their own, the whole thing kind of turned sour. The Inyokern meeting that was attempted, that was such a disaster, had a huge effect that just burns in people's brains. And the idea of reaching the public with factual information and useful information about meetings and what's happening, what will happen, and so forth, is a really good idea. That's where the fact sheet aspect comes in. But at this point in time, you've got multiple problems that are present that I think are serious enough that there isn't any simple solution to what needs to be done. It's easy to see what needs to be done, but actually effective implementation is another story. Public is not receptive. So I think that's what I wanted to tell you. The public has already had literally decades of information that was well received, but it was at a time when things were more relaxed also. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, Carol, over to you on the CSD communications.
Sure. Just a couple of points there that Mr. Carroll brought up that I wanted to respond to. He mentioned that trying to communicate with the GA has not been successful, that it's been crickets. By all means, let me invite you to reach out to me directly. I think one of the issues is, we were notified that you're represented by counsel, and I think Brownstein is representing you now. And so basically we have attorneys talking back and forth, which, that usually takes all of the discussion out of the hands of the people that can settle it quickly. And Mr. Carroll, I'm happy to talk to you at any time. If you don't have my contact information, I'm sure Dave can provide it to you, or somebody can. But I'm happy for us to talk anytime and see what we can do. Also, wanted to let you know that the problem with the meter changeouts, that was a program I was really excited about. We were trying to do that under our water efficiency grant program last year, and in fact it was an idea that we had come up with to try to use some money that we weren't otherwise going to use, in addition to doing the leak detections. And we had it all set up, and then we had a meter supplier that we were working with through Cal Rural Water Association, and they were going to provide the meters, and they were also going to provide the labor to do the change outs. And about the time we were getting ready to start, because I know that they had meetings, Cal Rural had meetings with you folks, and we're getting everything set up. The meter company they let us know that they needed to have half of the money up front before they could start the work. And so that Cal Rural Water didn't have that kind of funding, and they asked the GA for it, and we just couldn't provide it up front. I mean, we know that this is grant funded, that we don't even get the money returned to us for quite a while after the invoice is finally submitted. So it wasn't really something that we could do, especially since we would be prepaying for it. And that's why the meters weren't changed. I mean, I was really excited about the program. I know we were going to be doing some I think some AMR meters out there, or possibly even AMI compatible. So it was something we were really looking forward to doing, and I'm sorry that it didn't work out that way. It was just it was something that we found out at the last minute that they needed that money up front. So that's what happened. If there's anything that we can help you with in that respect going forward, I don't know that there is, but again, I'm happy to talk to you about the situation, and by all means, reach out to me at any time.
Okay, I will, Carol, thank you. And I should say, I understood that it was kind of an organizational, they were asking for money up front and the organization couldn't provide it. So I understood why it happened, but it also.
Okay, good.
Pardon me?
No, I just said, okay, good. I didn't know if you did or not.
Yeah, so, and I think we will be discussing things. Thank you.
Okay, good. With that, on this topic, where I'm going to entertain in a moment after public comment the decision on whether we make any amendments to our recommended communication and engagement documents. There are 3 of those after the Stantec study presentation and recommendations. But first, on that topic, I want to do open public comment, online in particular. And we'll give that a couple seconds, so I'll open it if there's any additional comment from the public in the room.
The one thing that I didn't mention in my little talk to you earlier, the thing that really produced so much confusion and so much upset was the raft of lawsuits that have now been set in place, and we basically quit. There was no real basis for going forward with the public as upset as they were, and we were putting ourselves in legal jeopardy by submitting the monthly notices that we were. So it has come to a screeching halt. Thank you.
That's unfortunate. Thank you. So any more public or online comment come in? Thank you. So seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on this topic.
I have a question. What I want to know is, how do we know what's in those appendices? How do we get a copy?
Well, we can ask to be, we have asked to be a part of the process, but unless we ask to be a part of that and ask to see them before they go out, it's just like we didn't have a final review of the final C&E plan. So is that something we want to ask to see before it's finalized?
Well, I would like to see the appendices. I want to see what should be listed in there. Because some of that stuff was originally listed in the original C&E plan. Methods of communication and then lists of contacts and groups.
And would you like, so are there, we volunteered either individually or as a group to look at that, and I don't think that has been yet undertaken. Carol, do you know where that sits with regards to the two appendices?
I'm sorry, I do not know.
Because
What does the
my
group feel?
My comments on this Stan Tech thing was to include more outreach events, and I don't think there was anything ever listed. I'd like to see a standard list put in those appendices.
I move we accept the C&E plan as we have written it, with the emphasis that Lyle Fisher asked to include, and that as part of this acceptance, we review changes or additions to it periodically as they come up.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, now we have discussion. And you can discuss what you might want to add or not.
Well, does her motion include updating the appendices and us getting a copy of that?
Yeah, my motion was that we accept what we have written with the verbiage changes that Lyle requested, and that we review any additions or updates periodically. Your appendices is a good idea in principle, but that list is always going to change.
I know, but it
For
needs to be
instance, you
in there.
mentioned the Balsam Street Wine Walk. Do you really think that people running around Balsam Street with their glass of wine are going to be interested in talking about water?
If you
I think
have
they're
a
gonna
booth,
talk
I mean,
about the red
it's
stuff.
part of reaching out, social events.
I stand by my motion.
I'm just saying, I think we should have those appendices in there, because that was the original C&E plan, the review. You were going to put all that in appendices.
We weren't going to do it ourselves. We offered to do it. We didn't make that a requirement.
Okay, that was never made clear to me when we had the discussion about, you said you were going to make, from my understanding, you were going to make the appendices, all that other information that used to be in the original C&E plan was going to be put in appendices and updated.
It wasn't all, but it was most things. Some of it was elsewhere. So Renee has proposed a change. Does the majority feel like there's any merit in that or some adjustment to the motion on the floor? Do we have enough that we would ask for an immediate vote on the motion and then take up alternate motions, or what's the feeling of the group?
I'd like to amend and include the appendices.
Okay, what's the feeling of the rest of the group on that subject?
Is that perhaps included in the motion if we are to review any changes?
I said review anything that would come up.
But it doesn't specifically mention appendices. I mean, that's like left out. How are people going to know that the appendices even exist or need to be updated?
Well, they're referenced in there, but Judy, would you consider amending your motion to include the word,
No.
to include appendices?
No, I want it general. So it would review anything that came up that we would give our, think we needed to give our opinion on. And if appendices come up, then we would review it.
So the first version that was produced would not be reviewed?
I don't know you just said, well, first of all, you have a motion and a second on the floor and you should vote on it. But you said earlier tonight that we didn't actually, as a committee, review the final version where word changes were made on the first C&E plan.
I believe that's correct.
So,
Does anybody else, some of you were there, did we or did we not?
I kind of remember that. That's true.
You said what I said is true, because I have sometimes memory lapse. And so what I'm saying is clarification of your motion. Are you asking for review of the final version of it that goes out? And I was,
Changes.
and you said anything, and I was going to say what might satisfy Renee is including appendices, but it's just more specific.
changes. Any changes that are significant. Appendices would be a significant change.
But the appendices haven't even been completed. They're non-existent at this point.
I
Because the
have my
draft that
motion,
we
why
were
don't you vote on
given,
it?
the draft we were given doesn't even have appendices listed. So
Other thoughts? Okay, all in favor of the motion as Judy stated and what you stated again, please, exactly in the words you would like.
I move that we accept the C&E plan as written with the verbiage changes that Lyle Fisher offered, and that any significant changes or additions, I didn't say that before, that are added be reviewed by this committee on a periodic basis.
Okay, now point of clarity in this is that is our recommendation.
That is our recommendation. We have in our C&E plan the recommendation that a communications director be engaged. A communication director would do what Renee is talking about. They would put together an action item program that would include going to various events that would appear to be places to go to engage the public.
Yeah, let me finish my statement. We have made a recommendation, and your motion is regarding that recommendation. That recommendation is not the final C&E plan. It's only our recommendation. Only
That's
we
correct.
can make changes to our recommendation.
Okay,
So we're not asking the GA to allow us to review a final version that they produce.
whatever, we are only advisories anyway, so yes. Did you want me to change the verbiage yet again?
I'm just asking, I want to know, and I want to know exactly what I'm voting for or against. And I want to be sure that
voting-
everybody here does.
Okay, I'll take out my clause. I'll amend my motion to say, I recommend that we approve the C&E plan that we have recently created with the verbiage changes that Lyle Fisher offered tonight,
And nothing more.
and nothing more.
Okay, and we and Renee, we can take up at any time the appendices after this. So Lyle, do you agree to amend your second?
That's good enough.
You do. Any more discussion? All in favor? Oh, let's do a roll call on this one. So, myself, yes. Renee?
Aye.
Yes. West?
Yes.
Lyle?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And that completes it. Motion passes. So with that, we get down to member comments. And we'll start with John.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment?
Don?
No comment, other than just to remind people that the public hearing on the new rate schedule for the Water District will be on February 27th. 6 o'clock.
Is that going to be in the Water District or here?
Yes, Water District.
Western District, okay.
I've already said enough.
I have nothing further.
No comment.
The only thing I'll add is it's nice to see everybody back well and healthy after the holidays and the new year started. So look forward to more this year. Thanks, everybody, for those of you that made it. With that, we're adjourned.